Speaking of the distinguished competition, while the DCU officially launched earlier this month with the premiere of Creature Commandos on Max, James Gunn's first live-action offering, next summer's Superman, unveiled its official poster via social media Monday morning. The image, a motion graphic, is an obvious allusion to Christopher Reeve's take on the character and showcases David Corenswet's Superman ascending in flight, accompanied by a remix of John Williams' classic score and a tagline that reads, "Look up." Exciting details, all of which preempts the gut punch that the official trailer will not release until Thursday. Thanks a lot, James. Elsewhere, horror filmmaker Mike Flanagan has been given the go-ahead to write his standalone Clayface film. Without a director attached yet, it's unclear whether this film will be part of the Matt Reeves' The Batman/Penguin crime Elseworld, though Gunn referred to it as a DCU film. Currently slated for September 2026 release, Flanagan previously described it as a horror thriller tragedy. What do we have to clay for ourselves?
You just had to, it's you give Scotty unrestricted access to the outline. This is what's going to happen.
Scotty, get to the chopper.
The outline is my pottery wheel. It's my unformed clay.
Jeez.
How dare you?
Keep going.
I know you can.
Jay's about to mold this in his image.
Clay puns. We'll just keep stacking them. I'm fascinated by this Clayface movie because I think we're in such a strange position where we know so little about it. I mean, I think Flanagan has proven himself to be an excellent horror director, especially the series that he's done. He hasn't had a ton of success at the box office, but the series that he's done have been groundbreaking, like across different some of the series that he's done up to this point. But he's had this idea for a long time. We talked about it a long time ago that he had pitched this to DC, that he had a vision of a Clayface movie. And then we started to see Clayface appear in things. We saw him appear in the Harley Quinn series. We saw him appear in Creature Commandos. And then we started to hear about...
Sorry to chime in. He hasn't showed up in Creature Commandos quite yet.
Oh, okay.
Minor spoilers. We know he's going to, but he hasn't showed up quite yet. Sorry.
I've only watched one episode, so. But the character's just gotten a lot of attention, right? Like in recent, and there's even been rumors like, oh, he's going to show up in the Batman and stuff like that. Like it's just been a conversation around this character. And then, you have it finally get confirmed. That means it's going to start moving fast. We're going to start seeing casting. We're going to start seeing all of that come together. But again, it highlights for me this like really strange situation around Batman that DC has, because is it Reeves verse? Is it Gunn verse? We're not 100% sure. We do know, like you said, Matt, Gunn referred to it as a DCU film, so that like lends credence to the fact that it would be a Gunverse film, but we haven't heard a peep about Batman Brave and the Bold, so we don't know what the status is about Batman in his own universe. But then you've got this whole Reeves universe, which is being built on the side that doesn't really mesh with the Gunverse, but it's got a great Batman and it's got great characters. And then you've got this character that's kind of supernatural, and it's like, how would he fit in a Reeves verse without just completely changing the character? I don't think he really does. Like, unless you want to go totally supernatural, if you just want to head down that route with Reeves, you could do that. But I don't like that idea. And I don't think that universe is set up for that. It's very, very grounded. So, all that being said, you have this conversation. What are we doing with Batman? Are we going to keep running these parallel universes? Are we going to have a Batman in the Gunverse and then also a Batman in the Reevesverse? Because right now, that Clayface movie is supposed to come out a month before the Batman 2, which would be weird, right? To have like a Batman villain movie come out and then the Batman 2 come out, but it's a Batman villain, but he's not because it's a different Batman. And then it just sort of, it's strange, right? It's like this very strange middle ground of like, should we is there conversation about should we merge these two universes? I don't like that idea, but people are having that conversation about like, would Robert Pattinson's Batman work in Gunn's verse? And could you let Reeves have his corner, but bring that character? It's this whole conversation around this whole thing that I feel like Clayface has kind of opened up that conversation a little bit around the DCU and around the Gunverse and the Reevesverse, and particularly this weird tug of war that we're playing with Batman. And it should be said, Gunn and Reeves, they're very friendly. They get along. He like pumps up Reeves's projects, the Penguin and all that. He was always talking about, like, so they get along. Everything's cool there. But it's just it's strange, right? It's this very strange middle ground of this film. And overall, I'm excited for it. But as we're going to talk about later, do audiences have an appetite to see a movie about a villain that does not have the hero that normally fights the villain show up? I mean, we've seen that Sony would answer that no. So, it's like you kind of have this, like, I don't know. The Penguin was a good example of doing a good series where you have a villain and the hero doesn't show up, but a movie is very different from a series. If the Penguin would have been in theaters, it's not going to do well, I don't think. So it's like, it's kind of like how do you do that, right? How do you walk the line between, we've got this character, he's a villain, he always fights Batman, but this is not a Batman story, and will people see that? And the answer is not always yes. So it's interesting. It's a middle ground. And I'm going to stop talking because we're going to, I want to let you guys talk. And we got Superman to talk about and all that. But I don't know. What do you guys think about Clayface? Like, where are we at on this?
It's strange, man. And I dig it. I like the character Clayface. I really enjoyed him in the animated series. They did a really good run on that. And I know he's been a kind of a fan favorite on the Harley Quinn show. So, do you think it's poised to maybe make that like leap from like third bencher in the Batman rogues gallery and maybe take a step up in the mind of the populace? But like, I don't know. The idea of there being so many Batmans. Robert Pattinson is a flexible actor. What if they did the Brave and the Bold movie? Totally different tone. It's in Gunn's universe, but they just had Robert Pattinson play him too. Like, it's just a very flexible, it's like a multiverse thing, and like
Jekyll Hyde Batman.
Yeah, like he's like little more 60s inspired, a little more like classic whatever Batman, and like, but he's a little more campy. I kind of love it. I would love to see it.
Every time he punches somebody, like the word "bam" like pops up over his head or whatever. Yeah. It's like, yeah.
Well, it's like, and it's just like the multiverse has been much maligned. This week they had a Star Trek episode that dropped, and it was about the multiverse. And one of the first lines, they're like, there's a character on the show who has been stuck traveling the multiverse, and he encounters yet another slightly different version of someone he knows, and he's like, I effing hate the multiverse. It's just like, it's kind of the character speaking as the audience seems to be like, all right, just like give me a story that's about a character that I care about, and stop throwing like every version of every character at me. And I just don't know. I don't know if that's like overhyped, that sort of hatred of the multiverse, and this like there's a lot of worry about like multiverse fatigue, which is kind of funny. We've been talking about superhero fatigue for forever, but now it's almost like specifically multiverse fatigue is out there. I don't know, all this stuff talking about the Batman, the different versions, it just makes me think about like, can you just collapse it into one story? Marvel was so successful for 15 years when they just kept it one story in one universe and like kept a mainline story going, and all this other stuff is sort of like making it, I think it's losing people. And I don't get lost. I love multiverse, but I don't know. Maybe it's the way they introduced it. I don't know. It's tough. So I don't know what the DC universe has in store. Clearly, they don't mind doing Elseworld stuff. I think this movie could work very fine, just as similar to the Joker. It's just like you said. It's a horror, thriller, tragedy, just about this actor going down some dark path, and you never see any other superhero elements in it at all.
Yeah, definitely.
Could just be that.
All of this is pretty par for the course for me. Like, here we are on the eve of the DCU, where our hope was at this point, we've got Creature Commandos, and to your point, Jay, it's only 3 episodes in. We got Creature Commandos. We've got our first piece of Superman marketing. The DCU should be, raring and ready to go. And where are we at right now? We're asking the same questions we've been asking. What does it mean? Where does the canon end? Where does the DCU start? And, so that's a little disappointing, but I feel like for the rest of my take, I do have to provide that, the most slightest of spoiler warnings for Creature Commandos. But so again, we're 3 episodes in right now, but this was supposed to be the launch of the DCU, the fresh start. And, I went in with certain expectations and being realistic about James Gunn's sensibilities and proclivities, but it does not feel like the fresh start to the DCU I was expecting. So all that being said, as we've been anticipating Superman here, I've been excited for it, but I've always been kind of holding it at arm's length. I'm like, what does a James Gunn version of Superman actually look like? And I have to say, this motion graphic, this poster, is the single best piece of marketing they've done for this thing, for the DCU so far. It kind of shut up all the noise, all the comments from James Gunn, and it gave me a lot of faith and confidence. Like I said, I've been excited for this one, but cautiously optimistic. This, just thinking about it again, just seeing the colors and hearing the remix of John Williams' themes, like it's giving me goosebumps, and it's giving me a lot of confidence in James Gunn's ability to do right by the character and have the character work in his crazy, wonky DCU, but still be true to that version of the character. So I do want to chime in on Clayface just a little bit. I feel like you guys talked about it at length, but I have to say, with the connection to Matt Reeves, he just did that animated series on Prime, The Caped Crusader, and far and away my favorite episode featured Clayface. So if they can find a way to do an interpretation of that, I'd be fully on board. But the other fold here is, again, we know that Clayface is going to be popping up in Creature Commandos, voiced by Alan Tudyk, who voices the character on the Harley Quinn animated series as well. So if this Clayface movie is set in the DCU, they kind of have to cast Alan Tudyk, don't they? Or at least as a voice role for the monster version of the character. So
Reeves is also a producer on this Clayface movie, if you weren't confused enough.
Right.
You know, if the connections weren't already too much, Reeves is a producer on this movie.
Just to further confuse it all, I always really wish they would do an Alan Tudyk Joker. I think he would be a great Joker.
He would be. He'd be so good at so many things.
Yeah, for real.
He can do everything. He's the Renaissance man. He can cluck like a chicken on Moana.
He went to Juilliard.
He did, yeah. And it shows. So versatile. I think I stand with my stance that has been this way for a while with DC, that their audience is just okay with the separate properties. I think they're just used to it and attuned to it, and I don't think it hurts each other. I think, like we've said before about other things, this is a rising tides lift all ships situation for DC. I think that Creature Commandos is what I would call a soft launch for James Gunn's DCU. I don't know why that was their choice still, but that's fine that he wanted to do that. Maybe he just wanted to do something really 180 from what Superman is probably going to be in terms of, you know, visuals and grandiosity and that kind of a thing. So yeah. I think, I know, Scotty, when you sent the poster to our group chat, I was like, this is cool. This, like you said, this single-handedly gets me excited for this movie. Like, I know we're excited about the cast and stuff like that, but there's something very fresh and also like vintage and hearkening back to the Christopher Reeve movies about those. Like, there's something very nostalgic about that poster, even though it's very not at the same time. So I think that's a great thing for him to be able to latch on to, and I'm excited about the trailer. I'm excited that I was right that it's going to come out before the end of the year, because that happens infrequently that I'm right. So yay on that. And I'm looking forward to seeing like what the tone is really going to be of this Superman movie, because I feel like we still don't have a really clear picture of that yet. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what it's going to be like. And Clayface, I mean, I think it makes sense to be in James Gunn's DCU, because he said this phase is gods and monsters, and Clayface is a monster, so go all in. Why not?
Yeah. I think, too, just kind of reading the tea leaves, that he probably had Creature Commandos in the works before he became the DCU guy, like, and he's kind of confirmed that this was a show that was going to happen no matter what. If he had never been hired as the head of DC Studios, he was still making this show with HBO, with Warner Brothers, to bring it to Max. Like, that was always in the works. So I think just the idea of, because he did Peacemaker before he became the head of DC Studios. They loved Peacemaker. Peacemaker was very widely watched. And so I think they were like, all right, we want you to do another show. And he's like, I want to do this animated show. And then Peacemaker season 2. And then he became the head of DC Studios. So it was like, well, I'm going to rope this into this universe that I'm already creating. That just makes sense. But I think, launching the DCU, it will launch with Superman, right? I mean, it's like, it launches with Creature Commandos, but like most people are going to see their first DCU property is going to be Superman. You know, they're not really in tune to Creature Commandos, and that's fine. I mean, it's fine. But yeah, I love I haven't really talked about Superman, but I do want to just mention, like, the tagline is so simple, look up. But I love that. Like, I think that's a perfect tagline. It's simple. It harkens back to what we're used to. The it's a bird, it's a plane, like that whole thing with Superman. He's got the trunks on, which I think is a great call. Like, we're not trying to make him like, you know, we're not trying to get too complicated with the backstory and this feels like a shot at Zack Snyder, but it's but it's like the idea of, like, he's got the super, you know, costume that it was made in an alien base or whatever, all this type of stuff. Like, we don't have to do that, you know, like we don't have to. We can take a new direction and stand alone from what we're used to seeing with Superman, which is the Snyderverse, the Cavill, like all that type of stuff, and we can take it in a new direction. So yeah, I'm excited for the trailer. It's got a lot to say about tone. Particularly, I like James Gunn's style, but I hope that he has not leaned into that style for this film. I hope this film feels very distinct from his other properties. Like, I will not be crazy about the idea of, like, 6 wacky characters all, like, riffing on each other or whatever. You know, like, that's not what I need to see in this movie. But again, I'm still excited for it. I think it's going to be big. Like, I think the anticipation is going to build a lot for this one over the next year.
Yeah, I think so too. And I really think that, I responded to the stuff about Clayface. I didn't talk about this because I feel like it's hard to talk about. We've talked about the Superman movie so much, but when we will really be able to talk about it on Thursday. When that trailer drops, we're going to be able to actually, like, see the tone for the first time. And that's just really, really exciting. But I don't have much to say until then, so should have dropped a trailer sooner. That's all I can say. We would have really been talking more about it.
Yeah, Thursday hurts, but it doesn't hurt. It doesn't smart quite as bad as a Wednesday would. But, you know, it would be nice to get it sooner just to talk about. But in terms of this show, that would be a slap to the face if it dropped on Wednesday. But Jay, when you were talking, you stirred a memory in me. I think it just came out today. Like, it didn't even make the lightning round. But James Gunn was commenting like he does. And this may have been an effort to kind of, you know, pump up David Cornsweet a little bit. But he was talking about the outfit and the trunks. And I guess the decision to include the trunks came directly from David Cornsweet, and his kind of thinking behind it was like, hey, this is an alien that needs to kind of disarm people. So, you know, the trunks would be a way, hey, I'm kind of silly. I'm like a wrestler, like, you know, give you some familiarity. And James Gunn kind of like ran with that. He said he was trying to find ways to, like, make the suit realistic and grounded, but he just kind of, like, bought into there's a certain level of frivolity that comes with the character. Like, he was the very first superhero. Yeah. He's going to be wearing, you know, red, yellow, blue on full display. So I really liked reading that. And again, it just does encourage me that we're really going to get that Boy Scout version of the character.
Yeah, that's really interesting. The idea that the almost, like, campy nature of the character, the Boy Scout of nature, is, like, intentionally to disarm. Right. Instead of that just being his genuine who he is, which is kind of true in most versions. But, like, I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, me too.
Cool.
Yeah. I think Gunn even said in that interview, I saw a quote from it where he said, you know, kids shouldn't be scared of Superman. Like, when Superman's coming to save them, they shouldn't be scared of him. And it's this idea of, like you were saying, like, we don't need to take this to, like, this elevated, grounded place. We really can lean into what made the character whenever he first debuted so long ago. Like, we can just lean into that, and we can tell that story. We don't have to reinvent it for the modern world or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, that's all really exciting. Love it.